Welcome back to English Mastery Podcast. I'm Vey, and I am absolutely buzzing with excitement about today's episode because we're diving into something that could completely transform how you approach English learning.
And I'm James. I have to tell you, what we're discussing today is honestly a game changer. It's called the 80-20 principle for language learning. And I wish someone had taught me this when I first started helping English learners, because it would have saved so many people from burnout and frustration.
Oh, James, you've touched on something so crucial. You know what I see constantly? Learners who are drowning in grammar textbooks, trying to memorize endless vocabulary lists, watching dozens of YouTube channels, and then wondering why they feel overwhelmed and their speaking hasn't improved. Sound familiar to anyone listening? I bet it does.
Exactly, Vey. And here's what's fascinating. The 80-20 rule suggests that roughly 20% of your learning efforts will generate 80% of your results. This isn't just some productivity hack. It's based on real patterns that show up everywhere in life, including language acquisition.
That's so powerful, James. And today, we're not just talking theory. We're going to demonstrate this principle through a practical dialogue, explore essential vocabulary, and then guide you through shadowing practice that focuses on the most high-impact English patterns. Are you ready to discover what really matters for fluency?
Absolutely ready. So let's jump into a conversation that perfectly illustrates how the 80-20 principle works in real English learning situations. Listen carefully to how these two characters discover this life-changing approach.
Here's the scene. Sarah is feeling frustrated with her English studies, and her friend David introduces her to a smarter way of learning. Pay attention to the vocabulary and natural speech patterns we'll practice later.
Hey, Sarah, you seem really stressed lately. What's going on?
Hi, David. I'm completely overwhelmed with English learning. I spend hours every day studying complex grammar structures, but my conversation skills haven't improved at all.
I think you might be spreading your energy too thin. Have you heard about the 80-20 approach to language learning?
The 80-20 approach? No, what exactly does that mean?
It's brilliant, actually. This principle suggests that focusing on the most crucial 20% of language elements will give you 80% of your communication ability. You don't need to master everything simultaneously.
That sounds almost too simple to be true. What would be the most crucial 20%?
Well, for instance, learning the 1,500 most frequently used words covers about 85% of everyday conversations. That's much more manageable than trying to memorize huge dictionaries, right?
Wow, only 1,500 words? That actually feels achievable. What other areas should I prioritize?
Focus heavily on listening comprehension and speaking practice daily. Even 15 minutes of active conversation practice beats 3 hours of passive grammar study every single time.
This is revolutionary advice, David. So instead of worrying about every grammatical exception, I should concentrate on practical communication skills?
Precisely. Prioritize what delivers real results. Master the fundamentals first, and advanced concepts will become much easier later.
Thank you so much. I finally feel like I have a clear direction instead of just studying randomly.
What a perfect example of the 80-20 principle in action. Now, Vey, let's talk about why this approach is so effective beyond just English learning.
Absolutely, James. This principle appears everywhere in life. In business, companies often discover that 20% of their customers generate 80% of their revenue. In productivity, 20% of our daily tasks usually create 80% of our meaningful results.
That's so true. And in time management, people often spend hours on low-impact activities like endless social media scrolling, when 20% of their time invested in high-value activities like skill development or relationship building would transform their entire life trajectory.
Exactly. The beauty of this mindset is that it reduces stress while increasing effectiveness. You don't need to be perfect at everything. You just need to identify and excel at the elements that matter most for your specific goals.
Perfect explanation, Vey. Now let's explore some key vocabulary from our dialogue that represents high-frequency, high-impact English expressions.
Our first essential phrase is, "That sounds achievable." This means something feels realistic and possible to accomplish. For example, learning 50 new words this month, that sounds achievable.
Next, we have prioritize, which means to arrange things in order of importance. I need to prioritize my speaking practice over grammar memorization.
And revolutionary advice. This describes guidance that could completely change your approach or perspective. Using the 80-20 rule for English learning was revolutionary advice for me.
These aren't just random vocabulary words, they're expressions you'll use constantly in academic, professional, and social contexts throughout your English-speaking journey.
Now comes the exciting part, our shadowing practice. James and I will guide you through the most impactful lines from our dialogue. Remember, focus on rhythm and natural intonation rather than perfect pronunciation.
Here's your first phrase. I'm completely overwhelmed with English learning.
I'm completely overwhelmed with English learning. Feel that natural stress pattern? Now you try.
Have you heard about the 80-20 approach to language learning?
Have you heard about the 80-20 approach to language learning? Notice how the voice rises on 80-20. That's your focus word. Focusing on the most crucial 20% will give you 80% of your results. This rhythm is essential for clear communication.
That actually feels achievable.
That actually feels achievable. Such a useful expression for expressing optimism about goals.
Even 15 minutes of practice beats 3 hours of passive study.
Even 15 minutes of practice beats 3 hours of passive study. This contrasts active versus passive learning perfectly.
I should concentrate on practical communication skills.
I should concentrate on practical communication skills. This is the mindset shift that changes everything.
Prioritize what delivers real results.
Prioritize what delivers real results. The ultimate 80-20 philosophy in one sentence. Now let's do some interactive practice. James will ask questions about our dialogue, and you should answer out loud. This active engagement is exactly the kind of high-impact practice the 80-20 rule emphasizes.
What was Sarah's main problem with English learning?
She was overwhelmed and spending too much time on grammar without improving her conversation skills. That 20% of your efforts will generate 80% of your results, so you should focus on the most important elements.
How many words does David suggest learning to cover most conversations?
About 1,500 frequently used words cover 85% of everyday conversations.
What type of practice does David recommend over grammar study?
Active conversation practice and listening comprehension, even just 15 minutes daily. How did you do with those questions? Remember, this interactive practice is infinitely more valuable than passive listening because it engages your production skills, not just comprehension.
This is such a perfect example of the 80-20 principle in action, Vey. Instead of studying for hours, our listeners just spent focused time on high-frequency vocabulary, natural speech patterns, and active engagement, the elements that create real fluency.
Exactly, James. And here's what I want everyone to remember. You don't need to master every grammatical rule or memorize dictionaries. Focus on the 20% that matters. Common vocabulary, natural pronunciation patterns, and regular speaking practice. And watch your confidence soar.
Before we wrap up, let's give our listeners some specific 80-20 action steps they can implement immediately. First, identify the 1,500 most common English words and focus your vocabulary building there rather than random word lists.
Second, spend 80% of your study time on active skills, speaking and listening, and only 20% on passive activities like reading grammar explanations. This reverses what most learners do, which is why it's so effective.
Third, practice with authentic materials that match your goals. If you want conversational fluency, prioritize dialogue practice over academic texts. If you need business English, focus on professional communication patterns.
And finally, measure your progress by communication ability, not textbook completion. Can you express your thoughts clearly? Can you understand natural conversations? Those are your real success metrics.
What we've shared today isn't just about learning English more efficiently. It's about learning smarter in every area of life. The 80-20 principle helps you identify what truly moves the needle versus what just keeps you busy.
So tell us in the comments, which aspect of English learning will you prioritize using the 80-20 rule? Vocabulary building, speaking practice, listening comprehension? We'd love to hear about your focused approach.
And remember, this principle reduces stress while increasing results. You're not falling behind by not studying everything. You're getting ahead by studying strategically.
Until our next English Mastery podcast episode, focus on what truly matters, practice with intention, and trust that smart effort beats hard effort every time. You're building exactly the skills you need.
Keep applying the 80-20 principle. Keep speaking with confidence, and remember, strategic focus is your superpower. See you soon, amazing learners.
Take care, everyone.